Just suppose it was possible to connect directly to your brain with technology, and you would not even know that. How would you like that? Well, that's more or less what the title of this Economist cover suggests. Of course, there's a detail perhaps you haven't noticed, which is this. And I think it's telling. And the question is, how far are we in terms of technology? Or how far are we going to be soon? We're half of 24. So, my talk is about the surveillance-based, data-driven, AI-controlled cybernetic societies we have been living through. Perhaps you've been wondering in the past years sometimes how different life felt, somewhat strange. And so the question is, what really happened? I'm not sure you thought about that, but in principle, we're living in digital societies, data-driven, and AI comes in many places, and it's changing the way we think, feel, and interact with each other. And some people got very much excited about the filter bubble phenomenon for some time. They're still talking about it, but in principle, the next day you could just replace the algorithm by another one, and then the world works in a different way. Are you aware of that? So what I personally think is you have been living through a variety of digital societies, and I'll talk shortly about some of them. And it probably started with, trying to create secure societies. Security was kind of the prime human right, some people claimed. And then came surveillance capitalism, smart cities, smart nations, and so on. So I will not read the entire slide. We'll just say that things are even more complicated. So there are also additional subjects such as digital ID, planetary health, Society 5.0, transhumanism, and so on. So 1 hour, unfortunately, is not enough. And some people call these societies Big Brother or Big Mother or Big Other or Big whatever. So it's, and I will also talk about the vision of some people to create something like a super intelligent AI god that would basically run the show on this planet Earth. And I'm not very convinced of those surveillance-driven, AI-controlled concepts. And I'm more in favor of digital democracy. And so the question is, how do we get there? So everyone wants data. Anybody here in the room who does not? Well, of course, data is a nice thing for science also, not just to make money. There's a lot of data, big data, is being amassed by companies, by secret services, by military around the world, in every country, basically, this is happening. And then there's AI, kind of the motor of the digital age running on the oil of the digital age, which is the raw data. But there are all sorts of issues, privacy issues in particular. And I think the school will address that also in some other talks. What can we do about that? Because people are getting increasingly concerned, and for good reasons, I would say. Because now it's possible to find you just with your voice. Suppose you do digital detox, you left your phone at home, you have holidays at the beach, you talk to somebody, but there's a smartphone somewhere at the bar, and the Secret Service would like to know who are you, then basically just based on your voice profile, they can identify you, where you are, whom you're talking to, what you're talking about, that can be translated into any language and searched for keywords and all these kind of things, right? I hope you know that. And now also AI increasingly can read our emotions. Not only this, also in principle could read our heartbeat, and then why not read our brain waves? That would become the logical next step somehow, right? But already back in 2013, the then CIA Director Gus Hunt said, you are already a working sensor platform. It is very really very nearly within our grasp to be able to compute on all human-generated information. That was 2013. So what do you think we have in 2024? And there's more in the pipeline. I'm not sure everyone is aware of this. In particular, optogenetics is a particularly interesting way of interacting with cells of our body, including nerve cells, and could also be used to switch RNA. And basically, the idea is to genetically modify nerve cells in order to make them accessible through light pulses. And thereby switch it and program it and all of this. You know, this is by the person who is the kind of chief ethicist for the German government, right? It's not somebody, it's an important person. And so how do you transmit all the data? Of course, Wi-Fi will not be fast enough, so light will be much more efficient, so there will be Li-Fi, and it's in some phones already. And then how do you compute all that data? Will need quantum computers, basically, right? The question is, how far are we in terms of quantum computing capacity? And things are developing quite quickly, amazingly so. And that's just what is officially known, not what the military is doing. And then here, interestingly enough, it says bits, qubits, and neurons, okay? I'm not making this up. So, cybernetic societies. I mean, the idea is pretty old, I think, from the 40s of the past century or so. Wiener, who invented cybernetics, already wrote books about the human use of human beings, about how to control animals, and basically use information to control people and societies. And now we have the technology for it, right? It perhaps started with cybersecurity. Right after September 11, the Patriot Act was installed, and with that, basically around the world, for the war on terror, they said, mass surveillance was implemented. And you've heard about it back in 2013 and following. But most people have said, if you don't do anything bad, it's going to be okay. You don't need to worry. But that was as wrong as it could be, because it's not about just hunting terrorists. It's about controlling your thinking and behavior, as I will show you in a minute. With all that surveillance data, surveillance capitalism was possible. You probably know that big book about it. And back in 2010 already, I believe, yes, Google CEO Eric Schmidt said, we know where you are, we know where you've been, we can more or less know what you're thinking about. And also, if you read the text, you would see that he also said, you don't even need to type stuff into a computer for us to know that. That was 2010, okay? So you're being profiled, you're targeted, all of you. So basically, you've been put on a psychology bench. Your psychology personality has been read out. Everyone's personality, in fact, you could buy that data, at least at some point in time. Now we have the GDPR, it's a little bit more complicated, but there are digital doubles and avatars that basically represent your life. All areas of your life, okay? And the question is, what does that do to human dignity, which is the foundational principle of democracies? It's a human right, your right. And so is it compatible with dignity if you're being treated like lab rats? If people turn the society into a social laboratory? Now, is that ethically okay? Is that even legal? But anyway, what happened is manipulation of choices was invented, and that can be done very effectively with personalized information. Tristan Harris even spoke of mind control. He was working in a group control room, and he said a handful of tech companies control billions of minds every day. That includes most likely yours. And how do they do that? Basically, the brain makes simplifications. That's why there are cognitive biases. Those can be used to trick you. Every weakness, every strength can be turned against you. And I figured out hundreds, if not thousands of them. You will not know them all. And the Secret Services were among the first ones, basically, to figure that out and to use it against their supposed enemies. And now it's being used against everyone. Okay? For example, in order to manipulate democratic elections, and that, in other words, is using weaponized propaganda AI tools that know you better than yourself. Okay, smart cities, smart nations, advertised as a nice thing, and to some extent they are certainly. So now we can, of course, know everything about cities and what people do, and we can automate a lot of things. The question is just, is automation the right approach for a society in which we, enjoy serendipity, we enjoy making friends, falling in love, coming up with new ideas, be creative and all these kind of things. Should we automate that? And what is left of human life if we do that? Citizen scores were invented. The social credit score is one of the most famous of them. There were heated debates about that. Also, I was hit by that debate quite seriously. One of the citizen scores is the customer lifetime value. That means how much money you're expected to spend in your life determines your rights, in other words, and also the deals that you get. Okay, is that fair? I'm not sure. Then even in Europe, there's scores used by governments identifying high-risk citizens, as they call them, and also the World Economic Forum has at least one citizen score, a personal carbon allowance. My carbon is the name of that, and there are hundreds, if not thousands, if not millions of more. Okay, now with the new AI Act, this is considered to be a dangerous technology. Code is law. Okay, so yes, if algorithms more and more determine what you can do and what you cannot do, yes, then code is law. Then perhaps code should be transparent because you should know the laws, right? In that case, often we do not. Also, the consequence, of course, is that there would be digital policing. And not only that, there would be predictive policing, as we'll see in a minute. So the legal system may be automated. The police system may be automated. And this is happening even though the error rates are huge. There are 100,000 false positives for every real terrorist. Just suppose how many people are on the suspect lists. There's an error rate often above 90 or sometimes even 99%. And despite of this, it has been proposed by here the British Secret Service to do even a karma police program. That means basically judge you for your music taste or what you're interested in on the internet. And that would be rated. You would get plus or minus points, and those plus or minus points would determine your rights and the services and deals that you get on the internet. This has been happening already for a couple of years. If you don't like it, why didn't you say anything? It's even judged to be violating human rights. There was a court decision about that. I'm not sure, though, the program ended. Cashless society. There has been talking about this in many countries. Some countries have been going forward. In some countries, that was pretty disruptive. But there are several elements of this that we need to know about. One is surveillance. Basically, every transaction, every buying and selling transaction that you do would be recorded and perhaps kept forever to do all sort of analysis about who you are, what you do, and so on and so forth. The other thing is that it needs a digital ID. And there have been several proposals. Most of those concepts are not absolutely secure, have been hacked. And so some people even proposed, oh, couldn't we use the body of a person as a password and the passport and basically the access to your bank account? You could take your body, most likely. And in fact, with nanotechnology, such a thing can be done. It's possible to come up with digital IDs that, basically put a password on you. You did not even know it was done. And that's not all, because what they want is control, right? They want to make the planet sustainable, as they say. And so they would have central bank digital currencies, and those would allow not only to record all transactions, and know what you do when you order something on your computer and on the internet, but they would also be able to block any transaction. So if you've already been flying to some holiday destination this year and want to book another flight, perhaps that could just be blocked. The technology would be there. So it would be another form of totalitarian system, right? And you don't like it, you better speak up before we have it. Yeah, some people, serious newspapers call that Orwellian scenario of a digital command economy. And I don't think it would be really working in favor of humans and humanity in this planet. Actually, I wanted to show you some slides, but I don't have enough time. Last year, when I came to Lipari, booked the flight, and then went from there on, it was really a horror trip because it seemed like I was a lab rat, and they were trying to do everything to stop me from travel. Perhaps it was just bad luck, of course, but in any case, I can tell you this, if they were able to do just that, block your transactions, if they don't want it, it would be a horrible life. In the end, I injured my army. All right, it's not the end of what can be done with technology. There's embodied surveillance and the potential of remote control. And we're talking here about the Internet of Bodies and interconnected with, on the one hand, with digital ID, on the other hand, with planetary health, and all of that would be part of what happened. Apparently, what? Apparently, I'm not supposed to talk about that. Back in 2020, during the pandemic, when everyone was busy with other things, the World Economic Forum informed us that the Internet of Bodies is here, and tracking how our bodies work could change our lives. And certainly so. You should probably look into this. It has to do with nanotechnology. So the question is, how does it work? It's not about chipping you. This is misinformation. But there is a scientific field called Internet of Nanothings or Bio-Nanothings. And there are many publications about that. We'll find them. And basically, the idea is that it would be possible to spread nanoparticles throughout your body, drinking, eating, air, whatever, medicine, would spread those nanoparticles. There are tens of thousands of a millimeter in size. You cannot see it with your eyes, but it's still there. And in principle, it's possible to reflect information beams or energy beams and thereby get a scatter pattern that allows you to read out data about what happens in your body. Not only the size and shape and all of this, but a lot more details about what happens. This is in body surveillance, okay? And then you need to basically, a transmitter station, perhaps your smartphone is giving a helping hand for this. And what can be done with that? Well, there are great hopes in terms of personalized medicine, right? If you want to have a personalized medical treatment, we need to know a lot about you and your body and how it works, and how to get the data just the way I shortly explained. But who should be in control of that data? Right? The military, the Secret Service, Google, Meta, Amazon, your premier minister, chancellor. No? You should be in control, right? But are you in control of your data? No. So something is wrong here. Okay, so 10 years ago, the United States started this BRAIN initiative, and it was about understanding the inner workings of the human minds and how to improve how we treat, prevent, and cure disorders of the brain, including behavioral disorders, by the way. And so there's a brain activity mapping project. And, oh, wait a moment, I have to read this for you. Nanoscience and nanotechnology, this paper says, are poised to provide a rich toolkit of novel methods to explore brain function by enabling simultaneous measurement and manipulation of activity of thousands or even millions of neurons. And that's the brain activity mapping project. Now, it's not purely theoretical. You know, back in 2013, even before the Snowden revelations, it was published that we would need a lot of storage space for information because of human brain indexing. And rather than every 12 months, data would be doubling. It will happen every 12 hours. That means in 12 hours, we would create as much data as in all the time in human history before. I mean, every 12 hours, we have a new human history in terms of data volume. Now, this is where we are, basically. And so brain reading tech is coming. The law is not ready to protect us. People are calling for neuro rights. It's not there in many countries yet. Of course, you know about Elon Musk's Neuralink, and you think, oh, I would never have such chip implanted in my brain, so I'm safe. And the answer is, unfortunately, not. Because there's also non-invasive nanotechnology-based nano-neurotechnology. And already some time ago, DARPA was trying to basically have non-invasive neurotechnology, means without the surgery. And this, in that case, was about injectable brain control, but there's all sorts of applications about neurodust and all sorts of stuff that you should really look into, because it would change the world. And rather than surveillance capitalism that knows everything you do, we would have neurocapitalism that can make you do things somebody wants you to do. I would change everything, but would it change everything to the better? That's the question. So some people have basically said, we are in a situation where the world has become too complex. We don't understand the problems we've created anymore well enough, and that's why we need super intelligence. And so for such kind of reasons, also engineers have been working on something that they sometimes called an AI God, a godlike system that knows everything. I've actually warned of that back in 2017, 13 for the first time, I should say. Again, it's not switching. And one of the companies who would be a good candidate for that would be Google, because they have been investing into omnipresence, into omniscience, and in knowing everything, and then also into super intelligence, also trying to be able to manipulate everything, that omnipotence in a sense. And they could say they also want to be emperor over life and death. That means all the properties that we ascribe to gods would be available to technology companies. Could even do medical wonders with that, okay? As I said, I've been writing about these kind of scenarios. So there's a science fiction story. Willem Dick was the main author. I was more inspiring this story. But have a look at this. It's also available in Chinese. By the way, I'm not entirely sure it was the translation is 100% accurate. So perhaps somebody can tell me who knows both languages. But anyway, already a couple of years back, there were articles like this: AI God is here. And then LMS said, "Oh no, don't do that. You know, it's going to be a disaster." Did they stop it? Not at that time, I would say. And there are a couple of issues, and I don't have enough time to talk about it. But big data is limited, and also AI is limited, and we don't talk enough about it. Don't get me wrong. I love technology. I've always spoken in favor of using digital technology for good, in an ethical way, in a democratic way, and all this. We should do that. But also, in order to make best use of technology, we need to know about the bad sides, the limitations, and all of this, and we need to talk about it in order to make best possible use of this kind of technology. And now we have basically digital twins of the entire Earth. These are agent-based simulations that contain an agent representing you, and it's a personalized agent. They use basically the surveillance data in order to make that agent learn to behave ever more similar to you. There's even a Netflix movie about that. It's called The Social Dilemma. I think it's not a terribly good movie, but it gives you an idea. We're there, basically. I want to tell you this. But this digital twin approach lacks complexity science. And in principle, complex systems need to be designed to support self-organization, to assist it, to allow for it. And you should know that all the wonderful systems in the world are complex dynamical systems. Our brain, our immune system, our life, ecosystems. And I could tell you a lot more examples for this. Do we want to turn that into machines? I'm not entirely sure about that. And then something interesting happened after that article I just showed to you. The godfather of AI, perhaps the father of the God AI, left Google and warned of dangers ahead. So basically, only then it was realized that, oh, perhaps it's not going to work if we have 1,000 times more data or 1,000,000 times. Perhaps there is a fundamental issue that we have overlooked. And he got worried, and he's not the only one who got worried. And we should all be worried, perhaps, not too much, of course, but we should do something about it. So what now? Well, first of all, I think really we need to get back control over our own personal data and also our health data. If it's possible to create a digital twin and use that digital twin to figure out how to most effectively manipulate you doing something that somebody else wants you to do, you lost control over your life. You'll have no control over your life if you don't have control over your digital twins. There's working on that technology. Question is, when will it happen? Will it ever be here? Will it be law? But we have to demand control over our own data. Otherwise, I cannot imagine this experiment would end well. Moreover, I think there's one concept also enabled by digital technology and data that we haven't explored enough, which is digital democracy. And we could and we should build it. And I said that back in 2015. And since then, we're working on that. So this is about the question of how to bring the best ideas of many minds together. It's not, if you ask me, it's not done by just reading out every brain and having that stored in some monstrous database. Because as we'll find out also during the summer school, many great ideas just happen when you talk to somebody else. They were not there before. Okay? Now, we're talking here about collective intelligence. This is what you want to happen. When ideas add up to something bigger or even multiply in a sense. And it turns out collective intelligence can often outperform experts. And in particular, it's not the best single solution which really is the best. As the Netflix prize challenge has actually shown, if you combine the best solution with worse solutions, that can improve your solution, unexpectedly so. That was the success principle. So diversity wins, not the best. So it's important to combine different perspectives. And democracy, I think, is about enabling distributed knowledge and collective intelligence. How do we do that? Some principles are known. Also, we find similar things in swarm intelligence of bees, for example. We should have different phases. Phase one, independent exploration. Only then there should be information exchange, and then integration of ideas and solutions. And finally, voting, actually, if we have several integrated ideas. Important in the first phase, there should not be a manipulation of information search. You don't get that with most search engines anymore. You start being manipulated from the first second. It's not good. Okay, I said we should vote. And voting is really a nice approach because it allows people to find solutions even if they disagree. The important point is the voting method we use most of the time, majority voting is one of the worst methods. And there are various issues. Not only that there could be a tyranny of the majority that basically grabs most of the resources, also we don't have fairness, in particular not spatial fairness. And I'm talking now about a problem that's called participatory budgeting, where the city gives a certain amount of money for citizens to decide what to do with that money. And it turns out that this money typically ends in the center of the city. And the periphery gets nothing, and that then creates all sorts of problems, such as barriers and social tensions, and over many years, of course. And the question is, can we do things better? So I think we need different and better voting rules. And we've been looking into this and what is voting about, basically trying to figure out the voter preferences. That's typically done with a ballot, or some kind of voting input could certainly be improved. And then it goes into the ballot box, where then an aggregation happens, which determines then the democratic outcome. So we can change the voting input method, but also the aggregation method. Okay, and that's what we've done. We've developed an app, vote app, to make experiments and compare different kinds of voting methods. And I just show you a few of them. So there's approval voting, where basically you can, in an existing list of solutions, you can select those you like, and the other ones you do not select. Then there's combined approval voting, where basically you can approve, you can abstain, or you can disapprove. So you can express your wishes in a more differentiated way that again goes into the ballot box. Then we have rank voting, where you basically rank those different options according to your preferences. Again, goes into the ballot box. And there's cumulative voting, where you can distribute 10 points and you can accumulate them in favor of your most favorite projects. And there are many more approaches, actually. Okay, so whatever you do, it goes into the ballot box, and then comes the aggregation method, okay? And what happens there? So basically, most of the time we do majority voting. And then those options, again, most of the votes will be chosen, and the other ones won't make it. Bad luck, would say. And what else should we do? Is a question, right? It turns out that this approach, for example, neglects entirely the costs of the project. You could also say, okay, let's choose those projects that get most votes as compared to the cost of the project. And then you get a different list of selected projects. And then there's in participatory budgeting. Yeah, so this is what we do. And there's a third method, many more, the method of equal shares, where people get a virtual budget that they can distribute over projects, and those projects that accumulate enough money in easy terms get funded. So importantly, the outcome of the democratic election process can look very different. The majority voting would often end with a situation where one or a few projects grab most of the money, and there's basically no money left for everyone else. Not so for some other democratic voting approaches. So, if you try to make many people happy, then perhaps we should use a different voting approach than majority voting. And we've even done that, an experiment, in a real-life experiment. And of course, that went through an ethics commission also, and we did that together with a Swiss city called Aarau. And so there were brainstorming sessions for the participatory budgeting project. Those brainstorming sessions should, of course, activate collective intelligence. You can see we were using Mentimeters in the initial phase, that things got more sophisticated over time. And as a result of the brainstorming session, one of the first ones, we basically had a number of projects suggested for different areas of town. As you can see over here with those sticky notes. But then there were many meetings over about 2 years' time or so. And people were sitting together to figure out, can we perhaps do a project together? How can we improve it? How can we make it more concrete? Is it feasible? Is there enough money? And so on and so on. And so eventually, better and better projects were sorted out that then were the basis of the ballot. And there were 33 different projects proposed. And then there was the great showdown. And people were voting. And they distributed their points over those different options. And this is the outcome over here. You can see that basically those projects that had particularly many votes accumulated as compared to the cost of the project, they made it. But not only this, while majority voting would have funded only 7 projects, and that mostly in the center of the city, and every other district would have received no money at all. The proportional fairness approach that we took selected 17 projects distributed all over the city. So all the districts got some money, some project approved. You can imagine people were a lot more happy, a lot more satisfied. It created trust in democracy. It also turned out to be more inclusive because there were more younger people, more elderly people, more women, also more foreigners who were engaging in this process in order to improve their city, to make it their city in a sense, you know. So altogether, I'd like to conclude that democracy can be upgraded. We can have more approved projects, we can have more resourceful projects, more participation, more inclusion, more transparency, more trust, more satisfaction, and more fairness. And I would like to say it's better than optimal. This is important to say because the idea of that AI bot is it could figure out the optimal world. And then it would impose that optimal world on us. And we would just have to act as demanded. No deviation tolerated would be punished, basically. But there are a number of flaws in this assumption. Because first of all, optimization requires a goal function. There's no science to determine what is the right goal function. If you change it just a little bit, the solution will look very different. So it's sensitive to little changes. It's not robust. In other words, there is no one best world. There is no one best solution. It's just a claim that justifies a digital dictatorship. And instead, what we have over here is an approach that does not optimize a goal function, like the average utility function would be the thing that economists would choose. Now, they would choose the best solution for the average needs or desires. But nobody is average, you know. That average, the best solution to the average need, you know, could be pretty bad for everyone. Not good for anybody, for sure. For everybody. And so voting allows really for pluralism, that there are different kinds of people with different interests and needs. And they would not have to agree on a utility function or a goal function. Still, you could figure out a solution. And as I showed you, the best solution would probably be not a one-size-fits-all solution for everyone. One project that's funded, nobody else gets money, but rather a combination of different projects that satisfies diverse needs and people. Thank you so much for your attention.